Good morning from Vancouver to all people around the world at BrankoGems webinar with Dr. Lore Kiefert on importance of gemstones testing. I'm very happy to have Lore as a guest today. And I started the webinars actually before Corona in 2018, and my first two webinars are on gems testing, red and green gems with standard instruments. And I introduce idea of practical webinars with the videos and practical information. I think this will be very, very practical webinar because Lore has a lot of practical experience working in different labs. And she joined in 1995 SSEF Swiss Gemmological Institute, and she is mineralogist and gemologist, of course. She was working in Colostone department until 2005 when she moved to New York. During this time, we met first time, probably at some GLC meeting. She was presenting SSEF, presenting New York lab. And then we met in 2001 in Basel show and SSEF laboratory, of course, many times in New York. I was coming a few times just across street in Fifth Avenue to visit Lore and her laboratory, do some Raman testing of 3C diamonds, the very well-equipped laboratory. And then she finished one of the best laboratories in the world, Gubelin Gem Labs, for specializing in country of origins of different gemstones. Last 2 years, Lore is consultant, and we talk about this for a couple of years for her to be part of our talks and conferences. And she was, as you see in the picture, she was a speaker and workshop instructor at the conference in Greece. Hello, Lore, and how is weather in Germany?
Hello. It's cold.
Cold. So glad to see you again. You did many papers in gemmological magazines, and I know I started in 95 my gemmological career, and I read a lot of your articles, of course, in journal gemmology, in gemstone gemmology. I don't read German, but some of my friends even was getting me German magazines. What I want to tell that we met a few times, and I want to just remind people who came to the conference in Greece how it was good and how we enjoyed our time, but also learn a lot. We had the 3 intense workshops, color diamonds, opals, and one by Lore Kiefert, you see bottom right, on first time at my conference, at least, on country of origins. Very special topic. Many labs, not many labs, few labs doing country of origins, not many. There are few people specializing in this, and of course, they don't disclose this information very much, but Lore is, I think, more open than she's consultant, and she's sharing a lot. And we have a very nice group of speakers, as you can see on the left, Matthias, Michael Suntorovsky, Jeffrey Bergman from US Primary Gems, Stefanos from lab in France. Elena was talking also about rough diamonds, and we have the round table, why it's difficult to do country of origins or why a lab disagree. And Yanis Melas from Cyprus was moderating, and my colleague George Spirimilus was helping with workshops and co-organizing. So this was during 3 days. After that, we had a really wonderful trips. This is one of the flavor of our conferences. I want to thank people who from Serbia, Nesha Popovic, manager, David Delazic, who is a co-organizer and also was taping all lectures and now helping me with this webinar and other education efforts. And then Ognjanovic, it's our tour organizer. And we have many good trips to Athos, to the marble and ruby, it's side gemstones in North Macedonia. We went to the mine, zinc and lead in Serbia, a lot of good memories. And hopefully we will repeat this in a year and a half in Italy. You will see at the end who stay until the end. Hopefully you will stay. It will be approximately 1 hour with Lore. She has much to say, of course. We'll try to squeeze Lore in 1 hour. Just as an introduction to gemstones, she'll talk much more in Tucson, just in almost 2 weeks from now, 2.5 weeks, on February 3rd in the afternoon, 4 hours with Lore. You can register still for workshop. I'm doing in the morning on laboratory grown diamonds. She's doing for the gemstones, focusing on ruby, sapphire, and emerald, of course.
Hello. I always find it a little bit strange to talk to my screen because I don't see who is participating, and I just try to do my best talking to my screen. So I chose the subject of the importance of gemstone testing because very often I got to hear, but why do you have to test gemstones? It's not so important. It's more, food or cars or whatever is much more important. So I just give you a little rundown what we have to face when we are working in a lab, and hope you understand a little bit about what I wanted to say. So I mostly concentrate on ruby, sapphire, and emerald. Why are they rare? Where do they come from? And why is it important to identify them? I'm giving you a little bit of gems in history, developments of the gemstone deposits, development of mineral science, development of gemstone treatments and synthetics, and then of the gem labs. What all is a little bit going parallel. And where are we now? So I start here. Probably the oldest known use of a gem is jade, nephrite especially, that was widely treasured in China, in ancient China. It developed over the millennia into finer pieces all the time, and also jewelry later on. What you see here on the left is a carved cloud-shaped nephrite pendant from the 4000 to 3000 BC. So it's a very, very old piece of jewelry already, or gem. Then if we look at Cleopatra, I make some jumps in between. I mean, I could talk about the sapphires from Sri Lanka, 300 BCE already, but now I'm going to the emeralds. Cleopatra was famous for her emeralds, and emerald mines were in Egypt. Those go back to 1800 BC. Today, these mines are not productive anymore. But if you look at those emeralds, Pliny the Elder mentioned repeatedly that Emperor Nero used an emerald to improve his eyesight when watching the gladiator fights. And here, this I found quite interesting. Some Australians recreated glasses from emeralds, sunglasses. They were inspired by Nero's use of emeralds. The mounting is made of gold and diamonds. The glasses are, of course, emeralds. It took them 5 years to find the appropriate emeralds and a further 3 months to cut them to create those glasses. And they were sold for around about $200,000 in 2011. Now, if we go back again to gems in history, we have the Hinduism, and they have the caste system. It exists since the 6th century BCE. And then one of the privileges that was to own certain gems. So the highest caste, the Brahmins, they were allowed to own colorless diamonds. The warriors were allowed red diamonds, and the rulers and the administration. So the farmers and merchants were allowed yellow diamonds, and the sudras were allowed gray to black metallic diamonds. Now, if you imagine diamonds, colorless diamonds could have been also quartz, but especially red diamonds. If you think about how rare red diamonds are, you can imagine that rulers, warriors, administrators, there are so many of them, they cannot all have red diamonds. So it was assumed that a lot of those red diamonds that they had were actually spinel. In the Middle Ages, crowns were very popular, crowns adorned with gems. And you see here the crown of the kings and emperors of the Holy Roman Empire on the left. It is dated back to around 980 AD. To the right is King Karl IV, and he had the Wenzel crown made in the year 1347. And this crown was used for the coronation of Bohemian kings until 1836. So you hear gems in jewelry quite important. Now this one you probably know because it was very popular again when the Queen passed away a month ago or so. The Imperial State Crown. The Imperial State Crown has, first of all, the Cullinan II. Here on the bottom of the red stone, and the red stone was known as the Black Princess Ruby. It was already in the British possession since 1367, but the crown itself was only made in 1837. And only in the late 19th century, it was found out that this ruby, the Black Princess Ruby, was actually a spinel. So already there, you should have done some more testing, I guess. I come into newer times. Elizabeth Taylor used to love gemstones, and she had beautiful ones. Richard Burton bought her this ring in the center that was auctioned off in 2011 for $4.2 million US. The ruby weighs 8.24 carats. And right now the prices have gone up so much that this is probably now worth at least, I would say, 3 times as much. Now, if we look at the age of the actual gemstones, that's also quite interesting. We have, with rubies and sapphires, we have more or less 2 populations. You can see the one population here, Africa, East Africa, Sri Lanka, Madagascar, Kenya, Tanzania, rubies and sapphires, all around about between 500 and 600 million years old. Then you have the Asian ones here, Nepal, Pakistan, Kashmir, all between 35 million and 5 million years old. Then you have some Australian ones, Colombian ones, Montana, that are also quite young. If you look at the emeralds, you have a little bit of a different image. You have here, South Africa, 2.9 thousand million years. In the rubies and sapphires, we have 600 million years as a starting point. Here it goes back much, much more than Zimbabwe and Brazil. And then we go up to the East African ones, here, Zambia, Madagascar, and also Brazil. We go to the Chinese one, and then we go to Colombia and Pakistan, which are relatively young deposits. Funny thing is that I noticed a lot of times the oldest deposits, the oldest known gems are the youngest deposits. So Zambia has been found much, much, much later than Colombia. If you look at that, there's basically 3 formations, which show you now the oldest one for ruby and sapphire, that one cluster that we had for the African ones. And these all happened during the Pan-African orogenies, 750 to 450 million years ago. This is here. This was a fault where all these deposits formed. That's the oldest. Then India started drifting away towards the Eurasian plate. Now, when India hit the Eurasian plate, the Himalayas were formed. And this is where we have the 40 million year and younger deposits. We have Vietnam, we have Myanmar, we have India, Nepal, Pakistan, all in the Himalayas, the Kashmir deposit, all young. And these are marble related because marbles have formed when these 2 plates collided. And then a third group is the magmatic origins. And you see, volcanoes pop up here and there and here and there at different times. So there is not really any time frame like with these big events of the Pan-African orogeny or the Himalayan forming. They just distributed randomly and have also different ages. That is Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, China, Australia, and so on. Then if we look at the types of deposits, we have primary deposits. If you look at primary deposits, they are quite hard and compact. They are in the rock. Mining activities are often difficult. The extraction of the gemstones needs advanced time and cost-intensive mining techniques with underground mining. You have here in Afghanistan deposit, a ruby deposit where Vincent Padieu has visited, and I think he was here just recently again in that area. Then you have Myanmar, Burma deposit. Here they had a lot of secondary deposits, but they are going underground and they are hitting the hard rock there. This is one of the bigger mines that they have in Burma. And then in Russia, the emeralds, they were also found first as secondary deposits, which I explain later, and then later on in the primary deposit. So what happens actually, somebody just walks around and finds a stone, and then they look if they find more, and then they have their secondary deposit. It's accumulation of material that is eroded from the primary deposit and then transported by the river or by other means and accumulated in the certain spots where the current of the water slows down, and those stones can fall out because they are heavier than the other stones. So you have these little pockets of stones in the rivers. And you can see the Ethiopian image that I have on the right side. That's one of the very new deposits from about 2013, 2014. Here, the same thing. Somebody, farmer, found an emerald on the surface. They found a few more emeralds on the surface. They started digging in the soil, and in the meantime, they are in the hard rock, or at least in the very solidified sediment. Lots of text. So that's what I said before. Mining usually starts with an accidental discovery of a gem on the ground. Examples are the emeralds and alexandrites from the Ural Mountains, where an emerald was found by a farmer in about 1831. Open cut mining until about the 1950s, and then underground mining. Once there are no more gems found on the surface, of course, the miners start digging holes in the ground. I mean, another example is the Zambian emerald mine. The Zambian emerald mine was for a long time an open pit mine, and it still is, but they tried to see underground if they could go underground, but they did not follow up on it. And if you think about the Mozambique ruby deposit, I heard the story from the beginning when they found the rubies in 2010, that people who were invited, they just told them, well, you just walk over to the canteen, and if you don't find a ruby on the way to the canteen, then you don't get anything to eat, because they were so sure that the rubies are everywhere on the ground there. So another example, and this comes again to the development of the mining and the development of the deposit. When it comes to rubies, one automatically thinks of Myanmar. It is the oldest known and largest source of high quality ruby for a long time. The image shows Mogok, and you see the many wounds that are there where people have been digging for ruby and sapphire. Up to around 2010, this source delivered around 90% of all rubies worldwide. Now Mozambique is a very strong competitor. A lot is coming out of Mozambique now. This one I have to show because I just love it so much. These are ruby. That's a little bit of the history, the long history of Burma. That's probably a little bit of a dark phase that they had to go through when the British were under control of the mines. They mechanized many of the mines, but to avoid the sorters to hide the stones in the mouth, they had to wear a metal mask. So they had to work with this metal mask on just to prevent them from stealing any of the rubies. But the practice to keep the stones in their mouth is still practiced today by the small scale miners. And I was there in 2013 and I actually saw this happen when I was there. But of course, they are their own bosses. They are not stealing from anybody. Yeah, when I look again at the development of the mines themselves, you have for sapphire, for example, you have 4 basic deposits before 1990. You had the Burma, you had the Kashmir, you had the Sri Lanka, you had the magmatic or basaltic ones. The Kashmir and Sri Lanka were partly overlapping. The Burma and Sri Lanka were partly overlapping, but Kashmir and Burma were always very far apart. So it was actually relatively easy or not even necessary to do origin determination. After 1990, you had more mines in every country, not in Kashmir, but in other countries. For example, Sri Lanka, more magmatic sources. You had more mines in Burma, and you had all of a sudden Madagascar and East Africa, like Tanzania and whatever. And the properties of these stones, of course, overlap completely with others. So that's when it is getting important to know where your stone is coming from, because you know that the Kashmir sapphire is something very special because it's so rare, because there is no more mining. But Madagascar one, there is still a lot of mining going on and still always new mines found. Or if you think what I said before with the Burmese rubies, that about 90% of rubies were from Burma before, and all of a sudden, so it was not really necessary to even do an origin determination, because 90% probability that it was from there. But then came East Africa. We had Tanzania, Windsor, we had Mozambique, we had a lot of ruby deposits in Madagascar all of a sudden. So Burma is shrinking in importance in the ruby business, and all of a sudden there are other ones. So the people want to know, do I really have a Burmese? Colombian emeralds, Zambian emeralds, the same. Now Madagascar, more and more emerald deposits are found. So another thing is, when you have sedimentary crystals, they are often of high quality because all faulty or fractured ones are sort of worn off, especially in underground mining and with the use of explosives. The lower quality ones are now also mined. Before that was not the case. In order to make the mines profitable, because they have so much gems that are not really worth it, but the mechanized mining is very expensive, so you have to do something with them. So about 1% maximum is top quality stone. 1 to 10% you can have a very good quality, 10 to 20% a good to medium quality, and then 20 to 50% low, and over 50% would be non-gem quality in one deposit. So you have to do something about this. Now, up to around the 16th century, gemstones could not really be determined properly due to the lack of science and instrumentation. Red gems were called carbuncle or ruby, and the Indians talked about white, red, yellow, and gray diamonds. And then, up from the 16th century, optics and other methods were developed. And at the onset of the 19th century, scientists were able to determine mineral species and give names to the gems. That's also when a lot of new discoveries were basically there because those gems were all of a sudden distinguished from each other, like the ruby and the spinel. At the end of the 19th century, technical means improved so much that gemstones could be synthesized. So that was very fast. Once they knew the chemical formula of the gem, they already started synthesizing. This is when the first synthetic gemstones, rubies and spinels, were created. This trend was constantly refined in parallel to technical developments. And this is also where gem determination played a more and more important role. So I have a very condensed and not very complete list of a timeline of synthetic gems. So we have 1905 synthetic ruby, 1910 synthetic sapphire, 1911 synthetic spinel. I mean, they were already done a little bit earlier, but commercially available those dates. 1912 already came the cultured pearls with beads. Then we had in between, this is now missing, 1923, Nakken already created, but not commercially, synthetic flux-grown emerald. And in the late 1930s, early 1940s, Chatham created his emerald. But only for the IG Farben, for example, the flux melt ones only were important in the 1950s. 1949 was quite late, actually. Then we have the flux-grown synthetic rubies in the late 50s. Cassion came in the late 60s. Synthetic diamonds, HPHG, already in 1970. Synthetic opal. Synthetic sapphire, flux-grown, only in 1974. And so on. Synthetic spinel, the flux-grown one, only in 1989. And then it comes relatively fast, 1976, 83, 85, 89, 92. So you see the development in the 90s was very, very fast. And in the 2000s, it slowed down a little bit again. But we have the CVDs in the 2000s, the synthetic diamonds. So you can see there was a lot going on in just one century. And not much or nothing going on before, considering synthetics. So treatments of any type of gemstone is not new. And it has been applied forever. Once you had a gemstone which was ugly, you try to make it look better. The earliest mention is probably in Pliny, written in the 1st century. Treatments are performed to improve color and or clarity and or increase the stability. That is now. Back then, in this Pliny book, there is a little line saying emeralds can be made look better when you steep them in oil. And they talk also about putting color on the rim of stones to make them look nicer, or on the back. So there was a lot already known way back then and applied. The oldest, as I said, is oiling and dyeing, the reports in Pliny. This is still done today, especially the oiling for emerald. So if you have an old method and you have a new method, it doesn't mean the old method doesn't exist anymore. The old method is still applied, but the new ones as well. So you have to have a bigger head to remember all this. Similar age is foiling. Nowadays, the foiling is more or less replaced by a coating with a metal by CVD and other processes. So you have on the left top, you have dyed corundum, colorless corundum with lots and lots and lots of fractures, and that's where the dye goes in. This was actually part of a bracelet with blue dyed corundum, red dyed corundum, and green dyed corundum. So also corundum used to imitate emerald. This here is something that we had actually in our lab at Gubelin. This was a stone that was completely cleaned out of everything in the stone. So you see the fractures filled with air that are here. And this is after it was filled with oil. And you couldn't imagine that those two are actually the same stones. Here you have the foiling. And then you have the blowpipe method for the corundum, which was already described in 1048, and it is still done in Sri Lanka. And here I show you a little clip. So it's a relatively primitive method. They just feed coal in, and they have a little crucible where the stones are inside, and you get quite a nice result from that. And they are still using this today. While I was visiting this famous man, there were 2 or 3 dealers dropping off gems for him to heat. Now, if you look at corundum again, at the timeline with the heat treatment, before the 1960s, heat treatment was used with basic equipment like the blowpipe that I saw. From 1966 to 1980, they had all of a sudden diesel furnaces that could go much higher. The basic equipment could go up to maximum 1200 degrees, as far as I know. Heating with diesel furnaces 1500 degrees. That was used to convert the Sri Lankan Gouda sapphire Gouda to blue. So a lot of these light, milky gray, bluish gray stones all of a sudden could be turned into beautiful blue stones, transparent stones, by this method. 1979, they used oxygen gas to supply the furnaces to get even higher temperatures. In the early 1980s, electric waffle furnaces are introduced. Then high temperature Toda furnaces are introduced. They had better results. And always those furnaces were easier to control. The temperature was more steady and easier to control. Then in the early 2000s, all of a sudden, the people found new methods to get a low temperature heating of corundum, which turned pink sapphire from Madagascar and ruby from Mozambique. It took them the purplish touch that they had. And it only needed a temperature of not more than 900 degrees to get this. And you can imagine that low temperature also in detection is not as hard as when a stone is really thoroughly cooked. 2004 was a Punsiri heat treatment. This was actually a little bit of a funny thing because everybody thought it was a new diffusion method, but it was actually only because Mr. Punsiri turned off his oven a little bit too early, and the vacuum was broken and air came in. So the rim, the colorless rim, came from actually a bleaching process, natural again. And then from 2014 on, sapphires heated in autoclaves with pressure and high temperature were all of a sudden known. So these all are no diffusion, no coloring elements, no external source used, no flux or anything. Now we look at the ones with elements. 1980, so relatively late that they started using other elements or means to heat the stones. Titanium diffused sapphires enter the market. So they could make pale stones into nice blue stones. In the mid-1980s, the flux-healed rubies came, especially the Mongshu rubies. They call it flux-healed, and it was like a borax glass, and that entered the fissures and artificially healed those fissures. Since the mid-1990s, beryllium-diffused corundum showed up. In 2001, the market was flooded with beryllium diffusion-treated sapphires. that must be disclosed. 2003, beryllium diffusion applied on blue sapphires to lighten them. In 2004, we had corundum with the lead glass filled fissures that entered the market. In 2012, cobalt glass in the stones. So you have everything happening in the last 100 years. Most of these treatments on corundum in the last 100 years. Here I have another little one for the oiling of emerald. This was my colleague at the Gubelin Gem Lab, Hong Kong. He made a little experiment. He looked at the treaters, how they do it, and he bought a little instrument there. That's an emerald. Those are emeralds inside, and oil in the little vial. There is a hot plate that heats the oil to about 80 degrees or something like that to make it more viscous. Then the emeralds are put into that oil. This gauge is put on top. And it's made sure by the way it goes down that only air comes out. So you only have the oil left and no more air. We really tighten a little bit more. Now you're sure. Now you put the last little bit of air out, and you put already a little bit of pressure on. And this pressure pushes the oil into the fissures of the stone. So you can go further inside and in a faster way than if you just put a stone into a bucket of oil or something like that. So that's the way most treatments are done. I think that's good enough, yes. Then another development of gem treatments is the irradiation. The irradiation, as soon as radioactivity was known, people started experimenting, and it has been performed since around 1905 on diamond. The term irradiation encompasses a variety of sources, and it can be infrared, it can be visible, it can be ultraviolet, it can be X-rays, and it can be gamma radiation. Infrared and visible light normally does nothing to the stone. But ultraviolet light, for example, if you put a yellow sapphire under, or pale yellow one from Sri Lanka, under ultraviolet light, it can become more intense. Or if you put a certain type of pink sapphire under ultraviolet light, it becomes more orange. The color, there is an orange color induced into that stone. But this is, for example, not stable, and it fades over time. Normally within, if you put it under a strong light, it will be fading within a few hours, and it can be days or it can be months. X-rays are more stable. If you think about freshwater cultured pearls, if you put those under X-rays, it can happen that they turn out to be black afterwards. Irradiation is mainly done on topaz nowadays, and still on diamond. But nearly all gemstones can be irradiated. I mean, we have the morganite, we have the kunzite, we have certain types of beryls that are irradiated. A lot of times, this irradiation is not detectable. For diamonds, there is a way, but for topaz, for example, it's impossible to detect for us. We could detect it if we destroy the stone and if we go to a specialized institution to find out. But this is not something that is viable or doable for a gemologist. So up until the 1980s, there were no advanced instrumentation. If you look at the testing part of it, there was no advanced instrumentation available to test gemstones. They were done with what we call today basic tools. The focus of the testing was the distinction between natural and imitation, and later on natural and synthetic. But this was always the synthetics that were easily recognizable, for example, the Verneuil synthetic corundum. Treatments back then were considered common practice and did not need to be stated on a report, so it also was not so important to distinguish, to determine a treatment of a gem. The origins were much less than after the 1980s, I explained that before, and the quality of the stone played a larger role than its origin. So the origin determination was not of major concern. So here is the father of Dr. Edward Joseph Gubelin, who opened up his lab in 1923. And you see all the instruments, hard to use instruments. And most of these optical instruments, of course, had no electricity or was very rare to have instruments with the electricity together, like what we have today, where everything is with electricity. These were the first spectrometers that were used, not in gemology, but in other areas, in chemistry and pharmacy. A UV spectrometer from Beckmann from 1941. And it was not until about the early 1980s that they were utilized in gemology. The same applies for FTIR spectrometers. To the left, to the right, it must be, sorry, is one of the first models from Perkin-Elmer from the 1950s. In all major gem labs, instruments, FTIR spectrometers especially, are there since the late 1980s. Later on, mid-1990s and later, Raman spectrometers came, EDXRF spectrometers in the early 1990s, I would say. And the newest development since around 2010, parallel to the treatment with beryllium of the corundum, laser ablation spectrometers conquered the labs. But these instruments are expensive. These instruments are in the area of around 100,000 and laser ablation 250,000. So you must really be a major lab with a lot of funding to be able to afford these instruments. Luckily nowadays, with a lot of development, there are some lower priced instruments on the market that are also easy to use, easier than those instruments. So what do we do now? How today in major gem labs? We still determine a type of gemstone. We determine a variety of the gemstone. Is it ruby? Is it or is it a pink sapphire? Is it emerald or is it a green beryl? Then we distinguish between natural, synthetic, and imitation. We do determine the type of treatment that we have. We determine the origin, and we do often also a quality assessment. Now, important, very important, non-destructive. The methods we are using have to be non-destructive. That's also why we cannot do the topaz for the irradiation, for if they are irradiated or not. Relatively quick, and they must be reasonably priced, because already today there was somebody in the lab with a maybe machiche beryl, maybe aquamarine that he bought for 250, and we wanted 150 to tell him if it is one or not, a machiche or not, and do all the tests. And he said, no, that's not worth it, I cannot do it. So they must be reasonably priced. Then we can do this with traditional methods, and very often, like in the case of the aquamarine beryl, we may have to go to high-tech methods. So, types and varieties, mostly with simple gemmological tools. Of course, Raman is much more elegant. You just put it on in an instant. You have your result, but don't forget the traditional methods. We have the polariscope to see if a gem is birefringent or singly refractive. We have refractometer, basically just similar, but gives you a value where you can then tell what kind of gem it is. We have the dichroscope to see if it's uniaxial or biaxial, if it has colors or not, different colors in different directions. You have the hand spectroscope. You have a UV lamp, and you have specific gravity. You have this hydrostatic balance to determine a specific gravity. Determination of the variety is often done visually by color. If you have a corundum, the variety red is ruby, the variety blue is blue sapphire, and all the other colors of corundum have yellow sapphire, orange sapphire, and the only other one exception is the patparacha. But if you cannot determine the variety visually, then you have to go to advanced instrumentation. Sometimes is it a Paraiba tourmaline with a copper content, or is it just a blue-green tourmaline? That's when you need instrumentation. So then we go to natural synthetic imitation. Here I have a few examples. You have on the left a natural emerald. Then you have a synthetic garnet, which is very close in color to the emerald. You have a glass, you have a fluorite, and you have a synthetic emerald. So the synthetic emerald and the natural emerald are the same type of chemical formula, but one is man-made and one is not. The other three in the middle, no matter if they are synthetic or glass or a natural stone of the same color, they are imitations. They are not synthetic stones, they are imitations of emerald, if they are used as imitations of emerald. Microscopy is still one of the best methods if you have inclusions. Sometimes you don't have inclusions, then you cannot see anything. But if you do have inclusions, there is a lot to read from those inclusions. You can see here on the left top, this is rutile, intact rutile, and in the bottom, intact rutile in a sapphire or in a ruby, which is not altered by heat treatment and which is not something that you can encounter in synthetic stones or in imitation of those stones. A Burmese ruby, a Burmese sapphire in that case. Or you have fingerprints inside the stone, often around a crystal. This is also something you can see in natural stones, but not really in synthetic ones of that type. You can also see from those fingerprints if a stone is heated or not. So you can see the treatment from the type of fingerprints, how it has altered. The bottom one, for example, looks like it has been heat treated. The outlines are a little bit more glassy, a little more silky, and the inclusion is probably an iron-rich inclusion which has turned into iron oxide. Then you have crystals that are intact or crystals that have been altered by heat, and crystals don't normally come in synthetics or in imitations. And you have like the two-phase inclusions or the multi-phase inclusions in emeralds. When you have those, you know it's not a synthetic emeralds. You cannot always use just one parameter. You have to look for several parameters, and you have to be sure that what you see is what you get. Here, I have a few examples. This left image on the top, that was a few years ago. We found these tourmaline imitations, but the people, of course, said that they were tourmaline imitations in Tucson at the Gem Show. Very, very nicely done, very well, especially the watermelon tourmalines that you can see on the bottom here. Look almost like the natural ones. And I really like those glasses. They were not cheap, so I didn't buy any. But here is one of those tourmalines imitations made out of glass, and you can see it's if you don't look exactly, it could be quite hard to be fooled. Here you have inside, you have elongated gas bubbles. You don't find those in natural tourmalines. You find them in imitations. Here also the synthetics, curved growth lines from synthetic corundum were now synthetic ones, and you often have bubbles in those, either following those curved lines or pulling up from those curved lines. And then the chevron-like growth structures in a hydrothermal synthetic emerald is also something that is quite easy to see in a microscope. But not always. You have the same image again. And this is a natural one from Colombia. So if you don't know what you're looking for, you may get those mixed up and you will say this is a synthetic one. So if you have in this one, which is a Colombian one, you should look out for other inclusions. And normally Colombian ones are relatively included. So you should be looking out for a three-phase inclusion, something to confirm that this is natural and not a synthetic. Only with that you won't be able to tell. Or you do FTIR analysis or something like that. Here, this was sometimes, it was for flux grown, a long time assigned for synthetic. A little crystal, in this case a phenakite crystal, with a growth tube behind with a bubble inside. Now in Ethiopian ones, we found nearly the same. We have here the crystal and we have here the growth tube, also with a bubble inside. So watch out, it's not always so easy. Natural or treated. You have here the most outrageous, I would say, example. These rubies, they are not as nice on the right side, on the left side. They are not as nice as they look here. They are worse. These are turned into these and then cut and into these by adding a lead glass to a very, very fractured stone. First, they are cleaned from all the iron oxide and then they are dipped into lead glass. And you can see the price. Here are beryllium treated ones, masses, you know, in little bubbles, plastics like pills. Cheap to make, cheap to sell, but not good if you get one. This one I already showed you before. And if you look at origin determination, we start talking about origin determination now. We have historical aspects that certain origins did not exist in the past. That's why we do origin determination. And the verification of an age of a jewelry piece, it's quite important. Like if you have a Mozambique ruby in an ancient piece of jewelry, That cannot be, because Mozambique rubies were not around 2,000 years ago or 600 years ago or something like that. The value, certain origins yield higher prices than others. Colombian ones are still considered much higher priced than emeralds from Zambia, or Kashmir sapphires are much higher priced than Madagascar sapphires. Here is an example of emeralds from Colombia, 10 carats, minor oil, and 10 carats Zambia, minor oil. And you can see that the Colombian price is almost, or is around about double of that one, of the Zambian ones. And at the beginning, when they started finding them, you see here is no Zambian, started finding them there, they were almost the same price, but Colombian ones are increasing in value much, much, much stronger than the Zambian ones are, because there are so many Zambian ones, and Colombian ones are not so frequent. Then we have ethical issues. We want to know the origin of a stone because we do not want to buy blood gemstones, or we don't want to buy gemstones that have been mined with child labor. So we want to know if our stone is maybe from, well, in the Tom Lantos Act in 2005, where they, or in 2008 or 9, where they were prohibiting all imports of Burmese sapphires because of the military junta that took over there. So the Americans said no more rubies from Burma, because they could control it, because 90% of the rubies were from Burma. Now they could not do that anymore because there are so many other sources. Then they would have to have somebody at the border control that knows about gemstones. They don't have that. For the jadeite, it's still a little bit like that. Jadeite, 90% of all the jadeite comes from Burma. So they were also putting a ban on that one because they could control it. If it's jadeite, we just put it aside. And if it happens to be one from Taiwan, well, bad luck. Whereas Taiwan has only nephrite. In most cases, the origin determination is one of the most difficult tasks, especially for sapphires. There are some origins with inclusions that are so typical that the task can be done microscopically, but these are the exceptions. Mostly advanced technology is needed for origin determination. So I have a few examples to get you mixed up a little bit again. We have here 3 rubies with rutile needles. One is from Burma, one is from Malawi, and one is from Mozambique. Would you be able to distinguish only by microscopy which is what? Here, which one is the one from Kashmir? The bottom left is the one from Kashmir. It has a typical zigzag pattern, but the one from above this one is a magmatic source, very close with the milky bands, not quite as zigzag as the Kashmir one. And the other one, when you cut the stones, say, in that area, you would not have any of those zigzag bands. So in that case, what would it be? So we have top left, as I said, Cambodia. We have top right, Madagascar. We have bottom left, Kashmir. Here, which one is from Kashmir? Left is the Kashmir. The right is the Madagascar. Flakes. Typical when I learned my job with origin determination, 1994, there was not much Madagascar material, and especially not that material on the market. It was, if you see those flakes, it's always Kashmir. No problem. Then these flakes came and it was not so clear anymore. Here, which one is the Burmese one? Left is Sri Lanka, right is Burma, nearly the same, almost indistinguishable. Which one is here the Burmese one? Top left Sri Lanka, top right Burma, bottom left Madagascar. Would you have been able to make the distinction with this only? Probably not. Now, Paraiba tourmaline. Which one is the one from Brazil? The top left ones are the ones from Brazil. The top right is from Mozambique. And the bottom left is from Nigeria. Which spinel is from Tanzania? Top left, red spinel from Burma. Top center, red spinel from Vietnam. Top right, pink red spinel from Tajikistan. And the bottom left, red spinel from Tanzania. Now, basic methods can help a little bit too. Now, maybe the most important quick help is the UV lamp. There are some examples here. For example, the long-wave UV fluorescence can make a distinction between red gemstones. Tourmaline and garnet do not exhibit red fluorescence. Ruby and spinel do. Ruby itself can be iron-rich or iron-poor, and that's what you have here on the bottom. You have ruby in the center, top, which is from Mozambique. This one on the top left and the bottom right, which are very bright, are from Myanmar, from Burma. The top right is from Windsor, also quite bright, and this one is from Thailand. So these ones are less bright than those. Iron-rich, iron-poor. Emerald, if a strong red fluorescence is noticed, it is most likely a synthetic. In the light blue stones, if there is a red fluorescence, it is most likely a synthetic spinel, not an aquamarine, no topaz. In shortwave UV, you can determine the heat treatment in blue sapphires because you can see chalky fluorescence in zones. The hand spectroscope is sometimes quite handy because it shows you the visible spectrum and certain lines are being absorbed when you look through a gem, the lines that make the color. So a strong chromium line, which is again photoluminescence, it's too much, so it shows again as a strong line at 700 nanometers or 694 in iron-poor rubies, slightly weaker in magmatic rubies, but the difference is small. In sapphire, if you have a strong iron line at 450, you have a magmatic sapphire. Jadeite, the line at 437 nanometer verifies that it is a jadeite. The chromium lines around 690 verify that the green color is natural. Or you have the organ pipe spectrum in red spinel around 690 to determine that it is a spinel and not another gem. At the bullseye in a natural rock crystal, polariscope, quick distinction between uniaxial, biaxial, and aggregated gems. You can put quite a lot on the polariscope, and then you can see ruby versus spinel or garnet. You can see aquamarine or topaz versus synthetic spinel. With a refractometer, you get the determination of the type of gemstone when you have the values, or you can narrow down the type of gemstone. In emerald, you can even distinguish between iron-rich and iron-poor emeralds with the refractive index. The iron-rich ones have a higher refractive index than the iron-poor ones. Then you have the hydrostatic balance. You determine a specific gravity, and with this, the type of gem can be determined. You can also determine the porosity of a material, especially done with hydrophane opal, to see when you have the stone in water, how much the weight changes when the water enters the pores. So you can measure the porosity. Then we come to the advanced instrumentation. We have the UV spectrometer. And you can see with the iron-rich and the iron-poor, what I told you before with a hand spectroscope, that's the 450 line here. And you can see that it's in Kashmir, which is an iron poor deposit, a marble type deposit, very low iron free, but in a magmatic one, very high iron free. And this you can see in a hand spectroscope as a 450 line. Other applications are the determination of heat treatment, color authenticity of diamond, jadeite, and pearls. Now, FTIR you can use for quite a few things like the oil or resin in an emerald. Here I have chosen the heat treatment of corundum with low temperatures. You have a natural heated ruby here, and you have here a typical line sequence of heating. The synthetic ones, of course, have been made under heat and have the same. But the natural ones have nothing here. Most metamorphic natural ones have nothing here. Magmatic ones have been transported with the magma to the surface, and they may also have that sign of a heat treatment at 3309. Then we also have the Raman spectrometer, which can also be used in a photoluminescence mode. Raman spectrometer, of course, you can measure everything, every type of gem you can measure with it. And you have here, for example, nephrite, jade, maybe Fabergé, we never could find out. And the client wanted to know if these pieces of nephrite are all from the same piece. And we said, we cannot tell you this. We cannot say it's all from the same piece, but we can say it's the same type of marble because the Raman spectrum, the signs of the Raman spectrum would have to be identical. So we measured several places here to find out that it is from the same type of marble, same type of jadeite, nephrite, nephrite jade, that's what it was. To say, yes, it is from the same deposit, but we cannot say if it was made out of one piece. Here on the right side, you see the photoluminescence spectra of spinel from unheated to heated by 1100 degrees. And you can already see how these two peaks, for example, change direction at 600 degrees already, and how the peaks get softer and softer the more the stone is heated. So you can detect a heat treatment of a spinel with this Raman photoluminescence method. EDXRF gives you chemical analysis, over 10 parts per million, and only over sodium and not the light elements. The trace elements can be measured there, and you can make ratios of the trace elements to distinguish origins from each other. So you can have here vanadium versus chromium, vanadium versus iron, for the Columbian, to sort the Columbian emeralds from other emeralds from elsewhere. The brown points, the dark brown dots are the Columbian ones, so you can sort them out from the Afghanis and from others. If you go to laser ablation, you can do all elements. You can also do the very low light elements, and you can also do elements where you have less concentrations than 10 ppm. And here you can pull apart some examples, again from emeralds, but it goes also for other gemstones. You can pull them apart. So you have the African ones here. You have Zambia way out there, Sulawesi. You have Nigeria, and then you have Tanzania, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Madagascar. Little bit with overlap, but with other ratios, you can then pull those apart. The same is for the Himalayan ones from the Silk Road, Pakistan, Russia, Afghanistan, China, that are all similar, but you can, with different ratios, pull them apart. And here on the bottom left, the South American emeralds, Colombia, way off when you look at the cesium to iron content. And the Brazilian ones, even the Brazilian ones, are not all, can be pulled apart with certain ratios. So this is possible, but as I said, a laser ablation instrument costs about 250,000, and it needs an operator, which costs you also a lot of money because it's a university person, an academic. So I have given you a little overview about what has happened in the last century or over the millennia since jewelry exists and why we do need testing. So the rapid developments are the main reason. New gem deposits, new gem treatments, new synthetics that made gemology a very important science since. Many of the problems can still be solved by an experienced gemologist with basic instruments and a microscope. And the microscope, I say it again, it's still one of the most important instruments that we use. A large number of gem labs have opened in recent years, but the major ones have these equipment that are necessary to solve all the problems. So when you have a lab, a small lab, think about what you need, think about where your limits are, and be sure you do the right thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lore, very much. I enjoyed a lot. Hope other people, a few more sign up while you were starting. Yes, gemstones are always fascinating topic. All these years, since '95, I'm working with gems as well. People know me as a diamond guy, but I enjoy gemstones. I'm more for treatments. I'm not origin guy like you. It's not my specialty. Anyway, we will now be open for questions. If somebody has, I will start with one or two, and then I can continue my presentation. So, there's a Q&A on the bottom. Please use it and type your question. We already have a comment from our friend Adolfo de Basilio from Madrid. Excellent lecture, I agree. Also from Audrey, our student, my student from last year from Tucson. So, for example, for me about treatments, I have some questions. I mean, more like your experience in the lab. It's the issue with the oiling and re-oiling of emeralds. You show very nice videos of oiling, and I'll enjoy it. And this is adding to these practical webinars that we see some videos and practical how people are doing treatments as well. So what's your experience labs should do? I know you have your own experience from 3 labs. When people bring emerald that is not oiled at the time of testing, and you can see with the infrared and fluorescence, there is no any reaction of oil, there's no presence of oil. And then in day or two after or next week, they oil it and use that lab report as a non-oil. I heard about cases like that. And what the labs did, or what you would recommend that the labs should do in these cases where people are re-oiling after certification?
There is really nothing the labs can do. We could seal it, but this is also not the solution. I mean, we have had cases where we saw the client going out of our lab with a no oil report, with a jar with the oil inside and dropping it right back.
Oh, yes.
There's nothing you can do. You just have to be aware that at the time of testing, what you said,
yes,
that this can be changed at any time. And if you do buy one of those emeralds, make sure that you get it checked again.
Yeah. I mean, my personal experience working like you, almost 30 years, you work almost 40 years, is that always good to check other labs report again in a local labs with the professional gemologist to make sure it's the same stone.
Yes.
Because I had the cases that stone is a big diamond HPHT in Cairns. It was laser inscribed, but then they re-polished the girdle, so now it looks like natural diamond, natural color type 2A. So this is things we need to double check always, especially reports older than 1 or 2 or 3 years, you know, it's good to check again. Okay, we have a question from a person I don't know personally, but good, new people. Olu Segin, what causes reddish glow on blue sapphire when exposed to UV laser torch? I think he meant torch or lamp. I know the answer, but I think Lore, you should answer. What causing the reddish glow in a blue sapphire? Talking about long UV fluorescence.
Sapphire can have chromium inside, and the chromium does fluoresce.
Yes.
And if you use a UV laser that is such a strong source that it will pick up on the smallest little bit of chromium, and it will glow.
That's true.
If you, that's one thing, if you move this over a little bit, but to where? If you no, I lost my. If you have the normal UV lamp, if you think about when also for the diamonds, you know, you have the low fluorescence, the non-fluorescence, and the high fluorescence, and the medium fluorescence for diamond, and that plays a role. But this fluorescence is actually established with a light source that is much weaker than a laser. So yes. when you have somewhere a report with a weak diamond fluorescence, and you go with a laser on you say they're crazy. This is a strong fluorescence, but no, it's not. It's your laser that is so much stronger.
Yes.
So
it is also you know, presence of chromium in sapphire, especially, it's also indication that stone is not iron rich, because iron would quench it. So it's also a little bit, you collect information about the country of origin. With the Sri Lankan stones has more than, of course, Thai or Australian sapphires. This is good. So this is the lamp. I mean, I'm using a box, but of course, if you use something much stronger, this is a EXA instrument that has a powerful 365 laser, you will see much easier this reddish or red fluorescence in sapphires if it's present chromium. Okay, this is good. Another question about aquamarine, you can also read, but I will read aloud for everybody. I purchased a 3-carat aquamarine from unscrupulous dealer. It was, he thinks, it was sent into a necklace, and 10 months time faded from Santa Maria, I guess Brazil. The dealer said it was heated, but I believe it was irradiated and unstable. What is your comment about aquamarine from Santa Maria?
It was probably irradiated. Heat treatment normally does not fade.
Okay. Yes, very good. So I'm glad people are acting and on your lecture and asking different questions. Great information from Kiefert. The previous was Meryl's office. In your opinion, is Raman the best equipment out in the market? People are always looking for one single instrument. Best equipment for what? But you can answer that. One instrument, Raman, is excellent, but for what? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's it. You have the different instruments for different applications. If you want to do treatments, it's better to go to the FTIR. But you don't get everything with the FTIR. If you want to do origins on sapphires, you better buy a UV-Vis, but you can't use it for much else. If you want to do only determination of what kind of gem it is, then probably the Raman is the best.
Yes, I agree. Each gemstone has a different best instruments. Like you cannot do J treatments without the infrared, as you know. You can, but you're very limited with fluorescence. So yeah, Raman is great, but not magical for everything. So great, a great answer. Another person that's with the email, Rachka says, great webinar. Thanks, Lore and Branko, for organizing. And he called it practical webinar. But I also think, because if you show enough inclusions and enough little videos, enough stones, it's not only a historical general lecture. I think I'm trying to bring speakers the last 4 years, and I think you're one of them, of course, who give this really hands-on experience from your practical looking at the gemstones, not just stories about gemstones, what is great, but doesn't help gemologists. They can read the books, always good to read books. So new follower from England, Omer, asking, he's thanking us for the from Scotland. a question about oil in treated emerald. In the air would result, question, if you oil treated emerald and air in air, what would be result interesting in the air? I don't understand.
Well, I don't know. It has been done in past times. They didn't have pressure devices or anything, so it has been done in past times. But I think in the past times they also had more viscous oils, the thin oils. I think you need it for the cedarwood oil, which is very viscous, or for the resins that are more like glue. And if you think of a normal mineral oil like bicycle oil or Johnson's baby oil, it's much more viscous, and you get the result, probably the same result in air, if you leave it in there long enough. But people normally want it fast and want it thorough, so they oops, electricity. Sorry, one moment, please.
Yes, no problem. Yeah, we can still see you, but Lore just
yes, but my electricity went off.
Ah, okay. Great. But your computer is still on, which is good.
The computer is still on, yes.
That's good.
Yeah. So
in
yeah,
case
so
we lose you, hopefully not. We answer all questions for now, but in case you lose you, we'll come back. Yeah, I'll have a few slides and we can come back to more questions, but we answer all questions for now, 7 questions. I mean, I have one while you are still in question mode. It's about, generally speaking, at what level you will disclose treatment. I mean, we can spend time and more instruments and more magnification and more testing and find something in a gemstone. But question is, for example, low temperature treatment. It's very difficult to separate if inclusions really changed at one temperature, did change, did not change. Or case of diamonds, I remember we have some micro lasering that you cannot see under 50, 60 magnification. You go to 100, 200, 300, you can see it, that something changed. What do you think? Should we disclose, and even if you see it in any circumstances, or should be some kind of standards? For example, as you know, clarity grading is 10 plaques. Of course, inclusions goes to 50, 60, 100 magnification. At what time we should really disclose treatment? Your opinion.
In my opinion, if you have a way to detect the treatment, you have to disclose it. Yes. No matter if it's 50 times magnification or not. A treatment is something that turns a not so valuable gemstone into a valuable gemstone, or trying to be a valuable gemstone. So if this is without disclosure, if it's sold without disclosure, you may pay more for the gem than you would if it would not be treated. And this is something that is then not really ethical anymore.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. We should try our best. Why I'm asking this question, because not everybody has Gubelin or SSEF or GA or AGL or GRS or whatever other lab, Japanese lab equipment to check every gemstone. So I guess a lot of people are working in each city, each country with a limited instrument. So they should do the best they can. And one way to do it is to, I mean, now it's a little promo, but it's also next question or comment from Rory, who is taking our workshop. He says, see you in Tucson. See you, Rory, as well. Thank you for signing up. I mean, I really cannot tell more than tell you again what we're doing. I'm doing for 15 years. I'm sure you're doing also lectures and workshops. The best thing is to take our workshops or any other workshops and see the stones, natural color, treated, synthetic, different type of treatments. And this is the best training I think we can offer real stones at the real workshops. So, I mean, and of course, even with standard instruments, it's amazing how much you can detect, as you know. If you're using properly, I mean, this is magic instrument if you know what you're doing, but it's useless if you're just checking a long UV all the time. You know, if you don't check short UV, compare it. So this is what we are trying to explain. So again, February 3rd, only in 2 weeks from now, we'll be in Tucson at AGTA show. First time I'm doing at the show. Last year I did it at a museum. You see picture on top right. We have still half class is full. We still have a few seats, so we don't like to make it very big class. We do up to 15, 20. This is our optimum number of people we like to do, like we did in Greece, and I'm doing it around the world. But of course, if it's a more, will help. We have other instructors. I just remind people that this is intermediate level. What you're doing with the Lore, basic to intermediate, not advanced. We did a lot of diamond lectures and a lot of webinars, and I put together these as a part of Intermediate Diamond Academy. 4 lectures by me, Dusan Simic, Miko Armstrong, and a lot of 19 experts talking about laboratory grown diamonds. This is the book to support that. It's a book from 2021, and most of you have it. Sold amazingly in 1,700 copies in a year and a half. And it's possible to take this program, still download and take a book and study and answer the questions. A few people took advantage of this from 4 continents, from South Africa, Australia, Austria, Israel, and they're part of online certification for online advanced academy. And I'm very proud that some top diamond experts like Dr. Zaitsev, Dr. Tejin Lu from China, Dr. Vince from Russia, Dr. Thomas Kenschweig from Liechtenstein, Switzerland, and Dr. Alan Collins, sorry, I'm missing doctor here, from King's College, England, are part of it. And John Chapman and myself, we're not doctors, but we teach as well, of this advanced academy. What is new? I realize that a lot of people, my circle is want intermediate advanced, but the people also needs to know basic. And Lore is trying to put this workshop in Tucson, basic to intermediate, not really basic, but intermediate level. So I'll be teaching with Lore. I'll teach basic, and Lore will teach intermediate advanced gemstone program. I'm starting March. Lore starting September. Why we think is different? I need to explain, because first, because it's our original research. Mine's on diamonds, Lore's on gemstones. We have small classes, 5 to 15. If it's more than 15, we give a 10% discount, because we want people really to learn, talk to us. We want to know each student personally. We want to explain. I'm available on the phone or email, and I'm sure Lore, and we will make exams at the end. And we develop our own instruments and books as well, writing articles, books. So it will be always 10% discount. And I think we have great lab instructors. Also, Elena Deljani will talk about rough diamonds. Randy Lightfoot, like me, working in GIA, polished diamonds, grading. And of course, Lore will talk about treatments, talking about synthetics and country of origins in advanced level, which is 2024. And we will have an expert diamond as a guest lectures that I mentioned, the 6 co-authors from the book Diamonds, that probably most of you have it. All of them did record the lecture, and hopefully most of them will answer questions live. And as a special extra guest that just happened a few days ago, Joe Lowry from New Mexico agreed to talk about turquoise. He is the expert on turquoise. So I'm trying to bring experts in different areas to talk to you. And this is something we'll put together with David Lazic on the website as we speak. Actually, as if you scan this, even now, you can go to this page on our website, BrankoGems.com. But we'll put for each of these program in next 2 to 3 weeks, just before Tucson, day by day, from March 10 starting gemstones, March 17 starting diamonds, until June. Then we go September to December intermediate level with Dr. Lore Kiefert, and advanced starts in January. And diamonds parallel, one Friday diamonds, one Friday gemstones. Prices, I think, reasonable, but we have options to do 3 installments, or you get discounts if you are NAGA or AGA member for now. And Lore, I'm looking forward to go with you to Australia. Actually, Lore, people doesn't know, but Lore did her research in Australia a long time ago, but she'll go back with me in July 1st to do a workshop on country of origin of gemstones. A few Australians following up on webinars, and from New Zealand. Hopefully you'll come. We also have a workshop from Dr. Dominic Mock on jade, expert on jade, myself on diamonds, color diamonds, and laboratory grown diamonds, and a lot of lectures from people from South Africa, Mark Cullinan, US, Gina Dionfrio, appraiser, Renata Bernard on opal, Damian Kalmar on antique jewelry, and a few more speakers just lining up. Something I'm very excited to promote. It's already done, most of it, 90%. I can say maybe one more speaker we can fit, maybe not. So let's see. We have already announced next Mediterranean Gem and Jewelry Conference in Italy. We are basically doing 3 countries, going from Austria, visiting Emerald Mine and Swarovski factory in Austria, in Wattens and Bramberg, going down to Cavallese. Why Cavallese? Because they have very nice place to do workshops there. And Gemomarum from Italy was nice to host us there. And they're making instruments to cut gemstones, and they have beautiful few outcrops and mine in Dolomite Mountain. Then we'll do workshops on diamonds again. Laura will do on advanced intermediate with Alberto Scarani from Marjorie Labs on gems. I will do with Mikko Armstrong from Finland, combining standard and advanced instruments, because Marjorie Labs will bring the advanced instruments. And then we'll do a nice tour to a factory in Venice and go to Slovenia for the lectures. Beside Laura and myself, we have Dr. Miha Jeršek from Slovenia, Dr. Clemens Schwarzinger from Austria. Mikko Alberto will talk about gems and diamonds, of course, advanced instruments. And very interesting lecture, I think, on historic diamond rings from museum in Vienna. Adeline Lagader from laboratory in Vienna will come, and Dr. Vera Hammer from museum. And of course, I almost missed it, but didn't. Dr. Jaroslav Hirsel from Czech Republic on genetic classification of quartz. And we do post-conference tours to the big, for Slovenia, but small mineral gem fair, but a lot of minerals from Balkans and east and south of Europe. And we visit museum of natural history in Ljubljana. So this is basically what I want to tell about upcoming events. We're going to 3 continents in the next year and a half, and I'm teaching these courses in 18 countries, and I have a few more questions. I'll be very happy, Laura, if you come back and just answer one more, actually, from Antoinette, who is with us, Antoinette Matlins. She wants to comment, of course. We know this story for a long time, that lead glass ruby cannot be called ruby at all, but only imitations. And Laura, you want to comment on that? I mean, what is your, I mean, I was part of these lab meetings for many years, GLC. Unfortunately, they stopped doing it, I think, because of Corona in Tucson last year. What is official name by GLC? What is the 7 labs on this composite ruby, or we call it, or fracture filled lead glass ruby?
Yeah, they say composite ruby for, but there are also cases where there is not so much lead glass in the ruby, and then you have to call it ruby with lead glass or something like that.
I see.
It's not all composite. It's a lot that is composite because it's a very heavy treatment that they use. But I have seen stones where the fissures were not so many, and they were filled with lead glass, and that's not the same. I mean, if you have a composite, it's really full. Most of them are the composites. Yes,
it's relatively easy to see the flashes with lead, but of course possible to confirm with the other instruments. But with a loop, even or microscope, it's easy. So hopefully, what is good, we'll have these samples in Tucson show all kind of treatments. I think you're bringing your samples, and I'm bringing mine diamonds, and we can, who never seen it, easy to detect, but some of them are not so easy. And hope to see you either in Tucson or in Australia. This is from 3 years ago. We have a really big workshop in Brisbane. We'll do it again. Australians on the left. This is a last big conference in Cyprus. I mean, Greece was also a good conference, but it's different before Corona and after Corona, of course. In Cyprus, we have 75 people, and this is people from 7 different countries attending workshops. So hopefully to see you again, or we have another webinar. I didn't promote it yet. I did actually, but not. It's on February 21st with the guy Bornstein from Staller on on diamonds testing instruments and machines, and I'm sure some of you already signed up for both. So thank you a lot, and thank you, Lore. I think you did excellent, and I think you to prepare for Tucson show and big trip, and looking forward to see you there.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
And whoever missed part of the lecture, or you have friends missing in 5 to 6 days from now, we hope to have a recorded version on our website and on YouTube channel, BrankoGems. Thank you a lot, and see you again.
You're welcome.